With free agency just around the corner, we take a look at the chances of Brandon Beane and our Buffalo Bills taking a defensive tackle in the 2020 free agency. Welcome to Believers Talk. My name is Joe, and welcome to this free agency edition of Believers Talk, where we take a look at the 2020 free agency period and ask ourselves, how does this pertain to our Buffalo Bills? Again, welcome to this episode, guys. My name is Joe. If you are new to this channel, first of all, thank you for stopping by. And if you haven't already, hit that thumbs up button. Really helps out this channel. And then when you're done watching this video, don't forget to hit that subscribe button for continuing up-to-date Buffalo Bills and Buffalo sports news. Continue to keep you up to date on the Buffalo Bills during this free agency time period. So if you want to hit that subscribe button, after you hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell. We'll notify you when we put out new content. So in this episode, we want to talk about the defensive tackle position. Obviously, most Buffalo Bills fans know that the Buffalo Bills are set to lose defensive tackle Jordan Phillips to free agency. Now, he could always re-sign with the Buffalo Bills, as Brandon Beane said during Senior Bowl week when interviewed about some of the Buffalo Bills players in free agency. He talked about some of them wanting to hit that market, wanting to hit the open market just to see what their value was and then make a decision at whether or not they want to re-sign with the Buffalo Bills or move on and take their talent somewhere else. Now, we don't know if he included Jordan Phillips in that conversation. He just said his players overall. So he could have been talking about Jordan Phillips. He could have been talking about some other players. But here's what we know. It's the beginning of March. We're less than 2 weeks away from free agency, as free agency set to begin March 18th. With the legal tampering period set to begin March 16th, and we haven't re-signed any of these big Buffalo Bills names. We haven't heard anything from Brandon Beane on the Bills side. We haven't heard anything from Jordan Phillips' side. So I'm not saying it's a done deal that he won't be back in Buffalo. In fact, he's one of the names that I definitely want to talk about in this video. But at the same time, you're not hearing anything, and you can't go on. If you're Brandon Beane, if you're the front office, you cannot assume that Jordan Phillips is going to sign with the Buffalo Bills. As soon as free agency starts, you got to be looking at that defensive tackle position and asking yourself, who helps this team out? Who is the guy that helps out this Buffalo Bills team? So, and unfortunately for Phillips, that means that he cannot wait to make a move. If he thinks the Buffalo Bills is the right place to be, he needs to make sure that he makes that clear up front and that he signs a new contract as soon as possible. So, we want to talk about Jordan Phillips for a little bit. Jordan Phillips actually leads defensive tackles in free agency in sacks. So he had the most sacks last season of all the free agent defensive tackles that are coming out in free agency this year, with 9.5 sacks. Now, if you are a fan of this channel, if you've been here a few times, you know that I have questioned on multiple occasions, is that because of Jordan Phillips' talent? Remember, Jordan Phillips in his first 4 years in the league, first with the Miami Dolphins and then with a stint with the Buffalo Bills starting in 2018, only had 5.5 sacks. Then he comes to Buffalo for his first full season and he gets 9.5 sacks. So I ask myself, is that because the scheme is better in Buffalo, or is that because the talent is finally getting there and he's working in a defensive scheme that he can work well in? Or is it a combination of both? You have to ask yourself these questions, because if Phillips is asking for a high number, which I don't think he is, but if he's asking for a high enough number and the Bills are not willing to pay that number, are there defensive tackles that are currently listed as unrestricted free agents who the Buffalo Bills can sign and maybe get full potential out of again? Remember, and I use this comparison a lot, a few years ago, Preston Brown hit the unrestricted free agent waters, and a lot of Bills fans, including myself, and we did a video on this back when Steve and I were doing videos about how we wanted to keep Preston Brown. He led the league in tackles that previous season before he had unrestricted free agency. I think he was tied with 2 other players, and we as Bills fans really wanted him back. Well, what happened? He went to Cincinnati, right? The Bills didn't re-sign Preston Brown. We ended up getting Tremaine Edmonds a few years later, or maybe the next season, and obviously that's working out well for us. Well, what if it's the same situation with Jordan Phillips? What if Ed Oliver would come in and be more of a full-time defensive tackle? There's a lot of potential there with Jordan Phillips, of course. We know that Star Latulippe took that contract negotiation to get less money so that way he can guarantee himself on this team next season. We all know that the Buffalo Bills are getting Harrison Phillips back. So these are all things that have to be part of the decision-making for the Buffalo Bills front office, including Brandon Beane. But as we look at the defensive tackle position in free agency this year, there are some pretty big names. And if the Bills are willing to go all out on these names, obviously we know we have the salary cap to do that. I hope we don't personally. I hope that we stick within the range that feels comfortable to Brandon Beane, which I'm thinking is probably between $7.5 and $8.5 million a season. But there are some of these guys right now that are looking to make big money, big contracts in this upcoming free agent period, and that includes a name that has been rumored to want to play in Buffalo and also has been rumored that Buffalo is interested in, and that's DJ Reader. DJ Reader comes out of Houston, played with the Houston Texans last season, had 3 sacks, so the sack numbers are not comparable, but again, if it's a system thing and he gets more chances at this level in the Buffalo Bills system, maybe he gets the 9.5, 10 sacks that Jordan Phillips got last season. And he also had, I believe, over 60 tackles, 61 tackles or so this past season as well. But his numbers just very high. According to Spot Track, his current market value is sitting at somewhere between $11 and $12 million a season, I believe it is, as I get to it right now. We're talking about $11.9 million a year. And to be honest, guys, I just don't feel comfortable paying that much money to one of our defensive tackles, especially if it's a rotating basis, right? I think DJ Reader is a great defensive tackle. I believe he's versatile. I believe he plays the run and pass both very well. And that's why I do believe he's worth that $11.9 million range that people are talking about, that Spot Track has his market value at. But I just don't know if I feel like the Bills should be paying a defensive tackle $11.9 million a season, especially if we constantly rotate, right? If you're paying him $11.9 million a season, I want him playing 65, 70% of the snaps. Okay, who are you taking snaps away from then? I know a lot of Bills Mafia would be completely okay with me saying Star Latulippe right now, and that's fine, but you're still paying Star Latulippe as well. You can't forget about that. So you do have to take a look at the numbers and see what makes sense for the Buffalo Bills. I have 3 names that I really think make sense for the Buffalo Bills in this defensive tackle market. Obviously, I want your opinion. Who do you want the Buffalo Bills to go after in free agency at the defensive tackle position? Or would you rather them not go after anyone defensive tackle, say, hey, Star Latulippe, Ed Oliver, Harrison Phillips can be our main guys, and then pick up a rookie, maybe pick up a 2nd round, 3rd round draft pick on a free agent or on a draft pick on defensive tackle, bring him into the mix, then you have a more controlled contract in that situation? Or do you like some of these big names? Are you willing to spend big money on a defensive tackle like a DJ Reader, like a Javon Hargrave, who is great against the run defense, which we know is where the Buffalo Bills struggled a lot during last season, especially in that Eagles game? That's one of the reasons why we lost that one. The Browns game, we had some trouble with the run stoppage as well. But you have to look at Javon Hargrave, and look at his cap number as well. His market value, according to Spot Track, is $14.7 million. So you're talking about an even bigger number there. But if he's going to stop the run, if he's going to make us one of the top 3 run defenses in the league or help us get better in run D, and then we could trust our corners and safeties, right? Because remember, we have one of the best corners in the league, if not the best corner in the league, in Tre'Davious White, and I think we have the best safety tandem in the league. So do we say, hey, let's rely on our safeties and our corners. We're going to get help on the edge. We have Ed Oliver. We don't need to worry about 9.5 sacks coming from whoever we get to replace Jordan Phillips. Let's think about the run defense, right? Let's think about the run game. Let's stop the run and let the edge rusher, whoever we pick up in the draft or in free agency, let's think about Ed Oliver getting pressure on the quarterback and forcing hopefully some bad decisions where our secondary can make the plays that they normally can make. So those are all decisions, obviously, that Brandon Beane and this coaching staff are going after. So again, let me know in the comment section, do you want a run-stopping defensive tackle, which I have one on my list that I really like for a pretty decent number, or do you want to go after a guy like a Jordan Phillips, who can get to the quarterback and get you 9.5 sacks in a season, and DJ Reader possibly, who can maybe get you double-digit sacks. But there are three defensive tackles that I'm really interested in. The first one being the Buffalo Bills, Jordan Phillips. I would love to bring Jordan Phillips back to Buffalo. I think he had a great season last year. I think he fits well for the scheme that Coach McDermott and this Buffalo Bills defense, led by Leslie Frazier, want to have. I think he fits very well. 9.5 sacks, again, the most by any defensive tackle that is going into the free agent market. I think he had the second most sacks for defensive tackles all of last season, only behind Aaron Donald. So that's a pretty good number. That's a pretty great number. And if you look at Spot Track, they have his market value set $6.1 million per year. I think that's well within the range for the Buffalo Bills, for Brandon Beane, to go after Jordan Phillips and give him a little bit of a contract, maybe even a little bit more than that 6.1, to guarantee he comes back and stays with the Buffalo Bills. Do I want Jordan Phillips to work on his run defense? Absolutely. But with 6.1 on the line, 9.5 sacks, if he can duplicate what he did this year, next season, I think will be pretty good, and he'll earn that 6 point whatever million that we give him. The next guy on my list is someone that I've talked about on this channel before. That's Michael Pierce, formerly of the Baltimore Ravens. You look at Michael Pierce, and he is a big-time run stopper, and that's, again, what some people would say the Buffalo Bills need up front, is a run-stopping type defensive tackle. Again, you have Starr, you have Ed. Let them get to the quarterback a little bit more. Let your edge rushers get to the quarterback. Let's worry about stopping that run, and Michael Pierce would help that out a lot. Again, last year with the Baltimore Ravens, and he's only looking, according to Spot Track, again, his market value is only looking at about $4.7 to $5.2 million. So again, I like that range. That's actually less than Jordan Phillips, and less that I would be willing to. That's less than what I'd be willing to spend on defensive tackle. Again, I'm looking at that $8.5 million annual salary for a defensive tackle. I look at this guy and say, hey, he's saving us some money, helps our run defense. I don't think you can go wrong with Michael Pierce. Another guy that I'm looking at is Danny Shelton. Last year played with the New England Patriots. Another guy coming in on Spot Track with about $4.7 million annual market value. So that's pretty good. 3 sacks last season, and then he had 61 tackles. He's actually second among defensive tackles in the free agent market this season on tackles. The guy in first is from the Rams, and they run a 3-4, so we know we can't bring him in because we run a 4-3 defense. But you look at Danny Shelton of the New England Patriots. I like him. I like Michael Pierce, and of course, I love Jordan Phillips. So those are the 3 guys that I'm looking at in free agency. But guys, there are lots of players to name here at the defensive tackle position. If you're looking at free agents, some big names out there, and so we can't look past any of them. And again, you're talking about Michael Brockers. He's the guy who played for the Rams last season, led in tackles, but he's a 3-4 guy. And again, the Bills run a 4-3, so completely different scheme. Probably wouldn't work out well if we brought him to Buffalo. Javon Hargrave, I talked about him a little bit, from Pittsburgh. Great run-stopping type defensive tackle, someone that we could bring in. But again, that big number, I think it was over $14 million, might keep us a little away from that type of a contract. He might be worth that big of a deal, but with the Buffalo Bills having so many needs on the offensive side of the ball, I think when we make splash moves this offseason, if we make splash moves this offseason, they need to be on the offensive side of the ball. We need to get consistently good, if not better than good, players on defense, and I think our defensive scheme will always have us in the top 5, if not top 7 in defense around the league. We need to focus on getting Josh Allen some more weapons. We need to focus on getting Josh Allen more protection, and I think that's what we're going to do this offseason. So I feel like $14+ million contract annually for Javon Hargrave. Again, great player out of Pittsburgh, but I don't think he's worth that type of money. Tyler Davison, DJ Reader, again, someone that has been rumored to be interested in the Buffalo Bills. Shelby Harris, Damon Harrison, Ashawn Robinson, some of the names on here. I'll keep going through them. Michael Pierce, we talked about. Andrew Billings. Another name that might be interesting come free agent time is Andrew Billings out of Cincinnati. Vernon Butler, Al Woods, and again, some of these guys, I look at Al Woods there, some of these guys play a 3-4 style, so you have to immediately take them off of this list for the Buffalo Bills and say, listen, this isn't going to work in Buffalo because we run a different defense, we run a different scheme. So you have to take a look at that when looking at some of these players. Down this list, you have Jordan Phillips, of course, you have Josh Tapoy out of Cincinnati, Adam Butler out of New England. So some big names. Again, let me know what defensive tackles you would be interested in. If it's not Jordan Phillips, right? I think as Bills fans, we are all interested in Jordan Phillips coming back and being a Buffalo Bill, or maybe you're not. Let me know in the comment section if you don't want Jordan Phillips back. But if it's not Jordan Phillips, who do you want to see at defensive tackle? Are you more interested in stopping that run game that at times was an issue for the Buffalo Bills in the 2019 season? Or do you want a guy who can get 9.5 sacks? I mean, there are very few that can do both, and the ones that can do both are going to be worth 12, 13, maybe even 14 mil a year. Are you willing to pay that kind of number? Again, guys, let me know in the comment section what you think, as we have you covered right here on Believers Talk. No matter who we sign, whether we re-sign Jordan Phillips, whether we get one of these other guys, you know we are going to have you covered. So make sure you hit that subscribe button, like this video, and like I said, leave a comment. Who do you want to see as the next Buffalo Bills defensive tackle? I look forward to seeing you all soon as we continue to break down the free agent period. Again, free agency starts March 18th, that tampering period starting March 16th. We'll see you all then. We'll talk to you all soon. Until we do, go Bills.